Hello, my name is Kelly Gatewood, and this is my Modular 1 Inclusive School Culture for EDL 853. Let's start with a little bit about myself. I have been married to my husband Scott for 20 years, and we have 3 girls, Kelsey, who's 11, Emily, who's 9, and Mallory, who's 4. I went to school at Wichita State, and I graduated in 2013. And for the last 10 years, I have been teaching at Cedarville High School in Cedarville, Kansas. And we are a really small town in southeast Kansas. There's about 120 kids, K-12. We're in one building. We're separated by our gym and our commons area. Our average class size is about 10 kids. And I am the high school math teacher. I teach 8th grade, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, Trig, and a financial math class. And I'm also do many other things in a small school that small, but I was also our co-pilot when we went through redesign a few years ago. The content that I covered in this modular, the first one was the article about 7 ways to create an inclusive classroom. And in an inclusive school culture, they said that the curriculum should address privilege and oppression, global power structures, and racism. We need to integrate student bodies by redistricting policies. And we need to be a respectful school community and hire a staff that reflects the diversity of our students. The education aspect, that we need to have academic support for all. All students have to thrive. We need to adjust the ranking calculation, use student diversity of students' population and intercultural understanding. The leadership is we need to prepare our teachers. We need to educate them about privilege and oppression and create a space for discussion. Students and teachers need to feel like they can openly discuss their feelings. And I felt this article was very supportive, equitable, culturally responsive, and it covered inclusive school culture. The next one we covered was inclusive leadership in education. And the main one that this article talked about to me was equality versus equity. Equality is we refer to treating everyone equally in the exact same way. And equity is where we ensure every child has the proper support that they need to grow and learn. I feel like this whole modular was about equity, but we actually live in a society where everybody wants equality. And so that makes it super hard. It also talked about the inclusive school culture, the social justice approach to education designed to ensure that every child's basic human rights to individuality, culturality, and developmentally appropriate education. And some of the leadership things you needed was a visible commitment, humility, awareness of a bias, curiosity about others, cultural intelligence, and an effective collaboration. I did not feel like this article talked about being very supportive or culturally responsive, but it was equitable and it included an inclusive school culture. The next one was 10 reasons for an inclusive school. And the reasons were that you needed to focus on the child's abilities and not the disabilities. You need to be accepting and understanding of others. You need to have a meaningful relationship developed, student support by multiple people, and the values, the input from the whole community. The education that it talked about is that we need to have equal access for all. Learn among same-age peers, develop confidence, highly trained teachers in delivering curriculum according to ability level, and various resources available to help reach all learners. I thought that this article talked about being supportive, equitable, and an inclusive school culture. And this one really hit home with me because I felt like there was a lot that my school could work on to be an inclusive school. The next article was what is an inclusive education and how can you implement it? And they considered an inclusive school culture as all students have equal rights to an education, that the classrooms need to be made up of mixed abilities, we need appropriate activities and accessible environment, and that the options in an education educational setting where they could have a full inclusion classroom. That's where all students belong in a main classroom working alongside peers. A partial inclusion where students learn in main classroom but have separate learning for additional support. And then mainstreaming where they start in a self-contained classroom and integrate into a main classroom gradually. And then it also talked about cooperative learning where you're learning in groups. As a school, we are almost a full inclusion. We do have some partial inclusion, but it's not being utilized like I feel like it should be. And we do have one kid that's mainstreaming, but I don't think that he'll ever move into a mainstream classroom. I thought this article was supportive, equitable, but it didn't really talk about anything culturally, but it did talk about an inclusive school culture. What are the roles of principals in a successive inclusive school? I thought that the image that they gave in the article was very good, and it talked about 10 steps that they needed to do. And I really liked how they talked about the dates of when you should be accomplishing this and how it should go from year to year. One of the benefits of our school is I have the same kids 5 years in a row, so I really know my students. And I thought this was a very good thought to put into what I need to do for next year. And I thought about, a big school where I didn't have that you didn't know your kids as well as I do, that you definitely want to follow those dates and so the next teacher could help them. I didn't really feel it talked a whole lot about the culture of the school, but that, that the students need to receive on grade level curriculum and that special ed teachers need to receive the same training that your regular ed teachers have. And I think that needs to go vice versa too. And I'll talk about this later on. But that I think that sometimes the regular ed teachers need the support that the special ed teachers get because these kids are in our classroom and you don't know what you don't know. And the leadership part of it, this is the one that I thought really talked about leadership, and that was the image that I put up here. And I thought that this article was very supportive, equitable, and inclusive school culture. But once again, I didn't feel like it talked about it culturally very much. The inclusive school. An inclusive school is any student who wants to participate should be able to. There shouldn't be any reason because of a disability, a learning difference, or a person's race, gender, sexual orientation. Any kind of difference should not keep someone from participating if they want to participate. The education is they will have an academic, emotional, and social scaffolding to build on in life and work. The classes should be co-taught by a general education teacher and a special education teacher. And that the leadership part of it should be aiming to be more inclusive, that you must prioritize listening to students, parents, and staff through focus groups and town halls. And I felt that this article was supportive, equitable, culturally responsive, and an inclusive school culture. The next article was about developing an inclusive classroom culture. And it talked about that we need to value what each student brings to the class and connect it to our learning. We need to be respectful of the class climate, plan for everyone to participate to achieve, and allow community to be part of your class. The education was you need to connect experiences to learning and provide support. And you need to minimize the barriers to learning. And I didn't tie this into anything leadership-wise. And this one I felt was something that I definitely need to work on in my classroom. And I need to see how I can improve on that. I thought this article was supportive, equitable, and inclusive school culture, but I did not see where it's culturally responsive. The next one was building an inclusive school culture with equity of access to knowledge. In inclusive school culture, they said customize the school programs for each student, that the education, but the equity must be raising and not compromising. We need to understand deficits to eliminate excuses, and we need to raise students beyond expectations. The leadership that they talked about in this article was that you have to be willing to have courageous conversations and be able to collaborate to support achievement. I thought this was very important, and something that our school really needs to work on also is our kids don't want to go above and beyond, and we need to find a way to get them where they want to do that. I thought this article was very supportive. It talked about equitability and an inclusive school culture. Once again, I did not really see where it's culturally responsive. Then we had the value of an inclusive education. An inclusive school culture is all students learn regardless of differences and they're educated together. And when we do this, that everyone benefits. Your education values diversity, and every child feels safe and a sense of belonging. You're going to develop social relationships and interactions and grow respect with students of diverse abilities when they interact with each other. And the leadership with this is that staff has to have the training and resources to respond to each of the students' needs. And I thought this article was talked about being supportive, equitable, culturally responsive, and an inclusive school culture. Creating inclusive schools for all students. The school culture was that every child is a permanent member of the general education classroom, and more restrictive setting is only used, and it is only short term when it is used. The educations, the student does not have to leave to learn. Rather, the services and the supports are brought directly to them. A compelling body of research documents that students with and without disabilities, as well as students who are learning English, both benefit socially and academically from these inclusive services. I thought that was very interesting that you did everything in your classroom and didn't pull them out, and I could see the benefits of that. I thought this article was supportive, equitable, culturally responsive, and an inclusive school culture. Tips on creating an inclusive school and why it matters. Their school culture was it means ensuring students from all backgrounds have equal access to education and services. The education part of it is the settings the least restrictive general education classes and must include all students as much and often as possible. But to be able to achieve this, the leadership needs to be inclusively as a shared responsibility, that the teacher collaboration is a must. You must have behavior management and strong communication. And I thought this article was supportive, equitable, and inclusive school culture, but once again, not very culturally responsive. My concluding thoughts is that I have a better understanding of what an inclusive school is. And I have learned how important it is for every child to be in the mainstream classroom for as much time as possible, and the benefits of it. That there's benefits to your regular ed kids as much as your special ed kids. My educational leadership skills have improved after completing this assignment because I understand the importance of having a good leader that is willing to listen to all of the stakeholders. You need to have an inclusive classroom. It takes everyone working together, and the leader how to find ways to make this happen. My slideshow promotes the current and future success and well-being of each student and adult because it shows how the teachers have to work together to provide the best services for every student. And we have to allow teachers time to grow in order for them to help the students grow. And that's something we would need to work on in our school. Relevancy. I thought this assignment was relevant to my learning because I've always suspected that we need to incorporate more of these services that we provide to our students in our regular classroom, and this is the research that has confirmed it. This content impacted my current mindset because now I know that what our students are receiving as their services are not what they really need to be getting in our special ed room, and we need to work harder at getting these students in the classrooms more. I do support having an inclusive education, but as a teacher, we need more resources provided to us to achieve that. I think our community would be receptive in inclusive school culture because we have so many students that already receive services that are not labeled. I feel like we already do this, even though we don't know that we're doing it, but I think we could definitely improve on what we're doing. I feel that the tools and strategies that they use would benefit our population as a whole, and that an inclusive school culture would benefit the students in compassion and understanding that would be invaluable in their future. My personal reflection is that this assignment has impacted me because I see how so many of our students would benefit from having an inclusive school. Or maybe I should say more of an intentional inclusive school. We have students that are always by themselves, and it isn't benefiting them as much as being in the classroom would. We have one student, just for example, that when he came to us as a kindergartner, he wouldn't talk, and he's been by himself all these years. Now he's a 10th grader, and he's finally getting into a regular ed classroom, and he's doing very well in it, in the 2 classes he's in this year, so we are getting better. We would also like to learn how to work with others that have different abilities, and this would be beneficial to everyone. I feel like this will make me a better leader, because I have to put a lot of thought into how much training and development would we need to be able to include all of these students. Most of our students are in our regular classroom, but we really don't differentiate for them like we should. We could do so much better for them if we understood how to actually help them and reach them at their levels. I would promote future success for each of our students and adults by trying to learn how can we differentiate for our support staff and our students more. We need to know this skill